Samuel.
Hello, Alasdair.
How are you doing, darling? How's your week been?
Oh, I'm good. I'm feeling a lot less lonely than I was this time last week. I was talking to a wall.
Oh, I was away on holiday.
You were in your
Sorry, in the vortex.
Oh, yeah, you were on the vortex. You were flying onto the TARDIS. Did you like that little bit where I threw the mic at you?
I did. Thank you so much. I like your creativity. It's always nice to see.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I had a nice time. I was away on holiday. I was in Croatia. I was in Dubrovnik. It's Game of Thrones land, if you're not familiar. Beautiful place, beautiful weather,
beautiful gowns,
and beautiful gowns. And what happens the second I get on the plane? I feel a cold coming. So as I arrive back in the UK, I now have a full-blown cold. But yeah. I have taken every concoction of ibuprofen, nasal spray, Sudafed. I'm sure some of these things contradict one another. I'm not fully here right now. I'm on, some other plane. I've had an iced coffee. I've thrown that into the mix as well, just to keep myself peppy.
You want to get the energy.
Energy from Monday Night Wholala. But it's been a good week. Yeah. You went to Bournemouth Pride. You went to a local Pride this week.
I did. I went to Bournemouth. I've got so many things lined up. I've got my birthday this week. I've got my birthday this week. I went to Bournemouth Pride last weekend because I used to live in Bournemouth. I had London Pride the weekend before that. This weekend I'm obviously doing birthday stuff. And then in not too long we're doing Brighton Pride for the day.
Oh, yeah.
Back to back. Yeah, I'm feeling very proud. But it was a very good weekend. It was nice being back in Bournemouth. It was pissing down with rain on the Friday, pissing down with rain on the Sunday, but the Saturday, beautiful weather. Gorgeous. It was lovely.
Just for Pride.
Just for Pride.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I think there's something so nice about the smaller local prides. I saw one, I don't know where it was, but there was a town crier doing their pride speech, and it was like,
was it Durham or something where it was Chapel Rowan?
No, there was a full town crier being like, hear ye, and it was so nice. It was gorgeous. It was sweet.
I saw it was a woman who was doing the church cloister bells, and she was playing Chapel Rowan, and I thought that was sick.
That was nice. And we got our votes in last week as well. We've done our voting. We've done our civic duties.
Our civic duty. I hosted a little voting party. I won't say who, but if you follow me on social media, but we made coloured themed cocktails. We watched the results, and
I think election night is so exciting. I even the US elections. I love staying up late to see what's going on. I just love events that everyone is following together. I love Glasgow live on TV. I love Olympics on TV. I love elections. These unifying moments. I love them.
I just feel really, maybe this is a hot take, but I just never really care about any of this stuff. Not elections and stuff. I don't specifically mean that, but I mean, this is the first time I've ever watched an election live. I have never really watched the Olympics live. Hot take, I know. I've never watched Eurovision live. I have never watched the US. I'm always I'll find out in the morning.
I'll see the results. That's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing for you. Get that screen time down, girl. The one thing I think is so sweet about this, not the only thing, but the one thing I think is so lovely today I saw following the election is there's a lot of new MPs who've never been MPs before, which in itself is quite exciting because obviously you get a lot of new people with new perspectives who've never been MPs before and excited to get going, fresh perspective, But they get a settling in day today in the House of Commons, and it's like freshers because they get buddies, they get lockers, they get their own little locker keys laid out for them. They did a behind the scenes in one of the House of Commons accounts, and they were laying out all their little locker keys for them, and I just thought, oh my god,
that's
new
very
MPs
cute.
Get them with their buddies. I was like, oh, maybe that's a really bad way
really,
to
really cute.
I mean, I should be scrutinizing power, right, and not be oh.
No, but you have to find moments of levity because I think there's so much pressure on us today to have to, especially back in my day, back in the day of woke. But there's so much pressure to constantly be on politically. I mean, and it's nice to just sort of take these moments of levity when you have them. I do think moving in day with your buddy and your locker key, there is something very, very genuinely sweet there.
A little moment for me of I found something so endearing about their settling in day. That was a little thing I thought was funny today.
Talking about political climates, I don't think there's anything more divisive, politically active right now than people's thoughts on the latest season of Doctor Who.
Yeah. My God. You know what? I feel like it's really gone If you're not on Doctor Who Twitter, don't worry, we are for you. I feel like it's got a little quieter, I think, now. I think kind of the rush of reaction and memes and critiques have subdued a little bit. And I think what's left is quite a few unhappy takes, I think, at this point. People have been stewing for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I certainly, when watching the season, kept being like, whenever I had anything negative, I kept being like, well, you know, we've got to wait to the finale, got to see it out. This is a body of work. And now that we have seen it out, and I'll get into it, I don't actually think we have seen it out. I have thoughts. I have opinions. Not all of them are good. Lots of them are good.
No, just like you, I think we, someone said we criticise with love, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I've held on to that. I love that opinion. That feels like, something that we're ready to do. I think now we have the whole season to look at. All the way through, we've done, review for every single episode of the season, usually in the same week it came out, and we've not tried to gloss any of our views at all, but we've always kind of been, I think, generally pretty positive about all the stories we've seen so far. And it's nice that now we can say, like, okay, as a season, as a soft reboot, how did that look?
Yeah.
Did that work?
Fully. And this is the thing. I mean, I don't even feel like I need to preface this, because like you said, I think the Wholala listeners really do get our vibe and get our intention. And we're not going to skirt around things that we didn't like, but we're also not here to ever just like crap on anything, especially things that people enjoy. And so many people have so much love, rightfully so, for this season. And I also feel like it's that meme where it's like, that was the worst episode of television I have ever seen 3 times. Like, you best believe Alasdair and I have pre-ordered the £60 steelbook for season 1. So no matter what our thoughts on the season were, we clearly did like it.
We pre-ordered it. It's I think it's delivering in August, isn't it, that one?
I think so. Yeah, there's something later in the year. Oh no, that was
oh god.
I've pre-ordered the Saltburn vinyl. And it's coming in Have you seen it? It's
with the bath water.
With the bath water.
Vile boy.
I did. And that's coming in September, so I've got a few things to look forward to.
Something it's the bath water. Oh yeah.
It's the bath water. But it's the Jacob Lordy bath water, so yeah, I'm excited.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, we're ready to reflect. But before we reflect on our feelings for the season, we wanted to hear what you had to say, dear listener.
We reached out to you on our X account, which is at HulalaPod everywhere, and we want to know your thoughts. Now, we always ask what you think of an episode when we're doing an episode review, and I've included a few more thoughts in this because it's been really, really nice. Because I do feel like, especially on like social media for Doctor Who, I mean for anything, it's easy to kind of fall into the echo chamber of people that think exactly like you. So it's nice to hear which people agree with you, what people think differently. So we're going to dive into quite a few of your thoughts.
Said at Oscar Barton 13, really enjoyable. Nice to have proper Who back. Proper Who. Ending was a bit naff, but that doesn't really make anything that came before it worse for me. I think the only really bad episode was Empire of Death. Everything else was enjoyable or good in some way.
Bad Wolf Archives, friend of the pod, said, not the return to form I was hoping for, but overall a strong selection of episodes. Devil's Cord / Rogue will absolutely become rainy day comfort eps for me in the future. Also gave me my favourite Doctor, some of my favourite music, and the best villain since Missy, and gay shit.
He said, overall, I liked it. I loved especially the characterization of the Doctor. I also loved Ruby and their relationship, and there were some stellar villains like Maestro, episodes like Rogue. I also think it balanced campy and serious really well, which is a hard feat.
Who said, I know it's not been everyone's cup of tea, but RTD has said that he was brought in to go younger and simpler with the show. Overall, I think it was not a bad little pocket of episodes, barring the slight letdown of the central mystery Ruby arc.
Then, friend of the pod, said, sadly the series arc missed the mark a bit by the end, but overall I think we've still got a lot of strong stories that feel so experimental and bustling with personality that I was never not entertained. So many new favourites, and 15 has already become a new favourite of mine.
Ryan said, great bunch of episodes with a great cast giving great performances, but as ever with Doctor Who, it fumbles its wider story arcs pretty bad. Very enjoyable to watch, but its wider story arcs can't stand up to much scrutiny.
We just don't need story arcs anymore. Maybe we just need 8 uneventful episodes that just kind of quietly end.
I mean, would you be mad? I don't think I'd be mad.
Be a genre, a format breaker.
Yeah.
High Vault said, pretty solid, a few incredible individual stories, but the arc as a whole is kind of a letdown. Only being 8 episodes and Ncuti being partially absent for 2 of them really hurts it. 15 has the potential to become one of my favourite Doctors, but I feel like I need more of him.
Hamish Steele, another friend of the pod, said, proof how important endings are, because for quite a few weeks it was knocking it out of the park each episode, but now people seem to feel quite defeated about it all. But we shouldn't forget how electric Ncuti and Millie have been. 8 episodes feels too short, though.
Yes. Laura said, I enjoyed it. Every episode had its highs and lows. Performances were incredibly strong across the board, and I adored Ncuti, but it didn't quite stick the landing fully. More than 8 episodes may have helped that. I think one of you said it right with, well, that was a great first half of a season.
That was me that said that, Laura. That was me that said that.
That was you.
McRep said, absolute banger anthology of fun experimental sci-fi adventures. Shame that the ending is like that. Whole, it's a wild ride of killer concepts, excellent characterizations, poignant themes that make an excellent case for the direction of this new era.
Whoa, okay, opinions.
Okay.
Great opinions.
And you know what?
Fab opinions.
A lot of them saying the same thing, which leads me to think that much as we'll have our like positive and negative opinions, there is clearly an overarching theme I'm seeing.
There are themes there. There are themes there for sure. Well, to organise our thoughts on the season, Sam, you've carefully thought about what are some of the key aspects of this season we might want to go through and discuss. So we've kind of sorted out some of the different elements we'll want to talk about today. And then we'll have a few kind of individual highs, individual gripes, bits that we'll want to kind of sift through as well.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Well, I always find that, like, if I go into an episode 200 prepared, I'll get to the end of it and I'll be like, oh, shoot, I really didn't talk about that. Or someone will tweet us being like, how did you not talk about that? And I was like, you're so right. How did you not talk about that?
You're so right. How did I forget that?
So I've just made, like, a little note with the main points that I want to hit. And I feel like we've got to jump in at the obvious. Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor.
Oh,
so first things first, he is such a charismatic Doctor. I really, really do love Ncuti Gatwa performing as the Doctor. Like, from that moment, I kind of think of it more from the Church and Ruby Road, because yes, he was in, I feel like his like time brewing, you know how we sometimes say when the Doctor starts, he needs that little time to like brew? I feel like that might have been the giggle, but then that meant that by the time we got to Church and Ruby Road, he'd obviously been filming for half a season already. He was, in it when he's jumping off that roof and he's like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Like, it grabbed me by my pinky and pulled me along. And I really, really, really do love his Doctor.
I love his Doctor as well. I really believe in his Doctor. It doesn't feel like an impression of the Doctor. It doesn't feel like someone trying to copy someone else's Doctor. It feels like a very original version, but also a very credible Doctor. I don't doubt Ncuti as the Doctor at all. And I think where I really felt that was the same as yours when he's running on top of the in Church on Ruby Road, and that transition from what the hell do you think you're doing to kind of leaping on the ladder, and then like they're like, oh, thank goodness I've managed that, and then into nice to meet you, Ruby, I'm the Doctor, and it just right away, and like a big cheeky grin, goblins. I was just like, yeah, there he is, that's my guy. So I love that. He's funny.
He's a fun
as well.
Doctor.
He's funny. He's funny. Humor is so back. I think the Doctor works so well as a funny character. Like, we've done more dark Doctors. We've done more kind of conflicted and troubled Doctors. But in any case, I think what works really well is being able to flicker between kind of moments of darkness and rage, but also like, just really great humor sometimes as well. I think like Christopher Eccleston's Doctor is one who did that particularly well as well. I was watching the first episode of Smith and Jones that Martha is in as well the other day, and there's a good line in that where the Doctor is about to have his blood sucked out through his neck with a straw, and she says, oh, you're a funny man, but laughing at the darkness, I think. And I was like, yeah, that is what he does. He does laugh at the darkness. That's a good character read on you. I forgot what her name is, the Plasmavore, but
Mrs. What is it? It's Mrs. It's lost.
Salt. Simple salt.
Oh, well,
simple, honest.
We'll come back to that. Oh, how have we not used that as a clip when it's like when someone says, "Why is there such a plot hole here?" and we're like, "Simple, honest salt."
Simple, honest. We totally forgot to do that.
We're going to have to quote tweet the video clip from this with simple, honest, salt.
100%. Simple, honest, salt. Also, I really like the Arv Doctor talk his way out of a situation, can talk his way into a room, and has that slight cockiness there as well. I think it kind of works for me. I think that for me feels the most like, the renegade runaway Time Lord that I love.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. The renegade runaway Time Lord, where I feel very like, even back as far as like, I mean, you could argue obviously with the first Doctor, but with the second Doctor, that like cheeky, running around, causing mischief, trying to solve problems. I think that you get that. I like the idea that the Doctor is the most intelligent person in the room, but he's also just kind of winging it, and he's like figuring out. I think from his earliest episode all the way through the series, you do kind of get that. For me, one thing that you were saying about with like I completely agree with what you were saying about the humor. I think the Doctor works best when there's humor involved, and I really like that line that you said about laughing at the darkness. I don't feel like we got enough darkness from Ncuti's Doctor this series.
I agree.
He was very emotional, and I liked that. I liked that we didn't gloss over the fact that 14 into 15 had the whole Doctor therapy storyline, and this is a much more emotionally matured Doctor who is in touch with emotions. He cries a lot throughout the whole season, which I saw some people sort of not loving, and I didn't mind it at all because I liked that they were following on from the giggle. But I feel like we didn't really get... The closest we got was Moffat's writing. Again, bloody love how Moffat writes the Doctor. When he was like, draw your silly little battlefield into dust. You hear me? Into dust. Yeah. And that was a moment where I was like, we're getting this, Doctor. And
just a little bit.
And I feel like that was something we didn't really get this season. It was kind of like, we almost got there right really early, and we didn't really get there. And I feel like we needed some of that, certainly in the finale. You put it really well when we were doing our Hulu episode about Empire of Death, where you said that after he sort of faced Sutek, everyone's dead, him, Mel, and Ruby run into the memory TARDIS. And then it's like, right, come on, Melanie Mel, come on, Ruby Roo, let's fly out here. And it's like, no, this is probably a moment where like you'd have some real emotional weight. And he does like scream out into the void, but I feel like it's almost like Russell, and I know Russell knows how to write these incredibly emotional, poignant, angry moments, but when in The Legend of Ruby Sunday he just punches the wall, or he just screams, or like it doesn't have the same levity, I think, to me, and I don't feel like it balances to the humour particularly as well as it has in previous seasons with previous Doctors.
We need a Doctor who's like forced to make some tricky choices, some difficult and maybe wrong choices. Would be nice, I think. And a bit of conflict as well with the companion would be nice. I feel like him and Ruby don't really disagree on a lot.
No, I completely agree with that point. And I've had a note here that said I don't feel like I've gotten to emotionally connect with him in the same way that I have with other Doctors. I feel like a lot of that is to do with him not being there for every episode in the way that I think the Doctor should be in their premiere season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think we need more time with this Doctor, I think, to get to know them. I'd feel pretty robbed if it was a 2-series Doctor at this point. I'd be like, I think we need more time. I think we could end up with a really banging 3rd series, is what I detect from this Doctor. Something that really challenges Ncuti, I think. Other aspects I really like as well, like I like the flirty, sexy Doctor. I think Ncuti can carry that because Ncuti's so hot. It also dabbles just a little bit into Hun culture, which I think could feel so awkward and so forced, but like, just like calling people babes, calling people honey. This Doctor was, I guess, in one version of the script, going to be the type of Doctor that flies the TARDIS to the sound of Sugar Babes. I just think that is really awesome. Is just feels very natural as well, because I feel like it really like plays to Ncuti's strengths as an actor. It's a Doctor I think really written for him.
One thing I really loved about the Doctor in this season, because like you were saying there, I think like Huns really do connect with gay audiences, is that this isn't to say, I don't want to ever discredit anything that, say, Jodie has done, because Jodie has played a queer Doctor, and I know that really, really connected with so many audiences, specifically because it was a sapphic love story. And obviously I loved that, but I'm not going to lie, I love one that also feels like it's tailored for me. And I do appreciate that, obviously, I'm a gay cis white man. A lot of spaces are made for me. But I can't help but love that there is a Doctor that is so openly like gay, a gay man. He's a gay man.
He's a gay man, no.
He's a gay man, no. He's a fit gay man, no. And especially the Rogue episode, like getting to see this love story Like, he has, the camp, silly moments of like, hey, babes, hey, hun, the whole series, but then seeing also like, no, I am a queer doctor and I will have a big fat gay kiss and a gay love story. And I just think that for like me, and I know so many other people, really, really, really resonated. And I feel like a lot of like little mini-me's and mini-yous who are watching this now when we were watching Doctor Who, this will, in 10, 15 years, they will look back on this and be like, that was my defining moment where I was like, oh, there are people like me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
Speaking of the longevity of this Doctor, one thing that it's a double-edged sword. One thing I love and also have concerns with is his costuming this season. Don't get me wrong, I love his costuming this season. I do love, my favorite is, it's the what I would call the classic 15 look of the long leather coat, the like tight stripy shirt. Love that in Space Babies we've got the grey variation. We know from some set photos we might also be getting some different colour variations of that outfit. And I would have personally been satisfied if that was like his Doctor out with the whole season. I love that he's the fashion Doctor. I love that we have all these other looks, especially in circumstances that require it, like when he was in the 60s and when he was in Rogue. I love that. I do worry, and I saw someone put it on Twitter really well, where they were basically saying that you want the Doctor to be visually memorable and to visually stick in someone's brain. And the fact that he has experimented with costumes so much this season, hasn't really had a staple outfit, that they worry that in the long term, that'll make his Doctor somewhat less memorable than, say, a David Tennant or even a Matt Smith, where, he always has the bow tie or he's always in the pinstripe suit. And I can see that happening because there were certainly some episodes where I feel like it would have benefited from him wearing the Doctor-ish costume because it had nothing to do with the story. So I'm thinking at the beginning of The Devil's Call when he's in like that red t-shirt, or when he's in Cemetery Yards for like 2 seconds, or even arguably in the black leather outfit for the 2-part finale. I feel like all of those episodes would have really benefited from him wearing that like classic 15 outfit. Yeah.
I loved the variety of costumes this season, and a lot of them were just banger outfits. I loved it, and I really didn't mind the variety. I agree. I think my issue with a couple of them, not my issue, I mean, I'm not that bothered at all, but specifically the red polo shirt and the jeans and the beanie and the yellow duffel coat costume, my only like complaint, inverted commas, because it's not a complaint, would be that they're very human costumes, and maybe there's something about the Doctor wandering around and things that feel like a bit of a mishmash that shouldn't really work together but kind of just about do, or something unusual in their silhouette, or something quite timeless they've got on, whereas those feel quite grounded in being like almost like 2000s outfits, and they're not Alien Wanderer. They're kind of just a guy. So there's something about those, I guess, to be desired. Like the other outfits really hit, right?
That's the finale outfit for me, though, as well, that he's just like some guy.
That too, right? Because like the Christmas episode, Judgment Ruby Road, one of the best looks, I think, was like this hot yellow vest, cotton kilt, you had the black leather jacket. Such a cool mishmash of things, and then like the brown leather shoes and like the high socks, and it was just like a really cool mishmash of styles, because you had like a very traditional tartan Scottish thing going on, then you had like the tight yellow vest and leather jacket on it, and it works. It's so cool, and it's very doctory in a strange way that feels modern as well, and like that would have been a great fit to keep on for a little bit longer than that one scene. So I guess we'll see season 2, how do they lean into that a bit more, because the Doctor typically historically gets away with wandering through different time periods wearing something a bit out of place.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's actually funny, I was just thinking about how I think that is the only time in this entire series we've had reshoots with that outfit, because that was obviously added much later after they filmed it, and they probably, well, not probably, they would have already filmed The Empire of Death, and they took, I didn't really realize at the time, the same leather jacket and gave it to him earlier in the season. So it's funny because we've all been talking about it as the Empire of Death look, but he wore it in like his first ever episode, so I just thought about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I have a few highlights from me for Shooty this season as the 15th Doctor. Running on the rooftop, like I said, just, who sees a ladder in the sky and thinks, yeah, I'll give that a go, babes. That was such a fantastic entrance. I remember when they uploaded that clip on the Doctor Who accounts, and I was just like, damn, this is Liquid Who, baby. We are back. We are so back. And
we are so back.
We're so back. And that just really worked for me. Do you get it? Do you get it? And boom. Love that delivery so much. That was so cool, so great. So worked for me. Couldn't be bothered to like constructively analyze that, so I just resorted to sounds. Reacting with disbelief and frustration at the fate of the racists of Fine Time, I thought was a beautiful scene as well. You know, the one where he said he really had to dig deep, and he did. We love to see a bit of spitfly. We do. The disbelief, the rage, the emotion gave me chills. Beautiful, made me feel emotional. Loved it. And a scene that felt very this Doctor as well that I really enjoyed was his reaction to the time window in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, when he kind of goes in and he gives everything a hard look and he's like, pondering, considering the time window. And then he's like, this is rough. This is rough. Like, and just cackling and bending over at that, I just thought was great and very his Doctor. I'm sure that other Doctors could have delivered that in a different way, but in that moment it felt very, very 15. And I like when there's still something fresh and defining about, you know, an actor's take on the Doctor.
Yeah. I was just thinking it'd be so funny to think about how different Doctors would do the same line. I can imagine 11 being like, well, this is rubbish, like looking around very like that, and then 10 being like,
this is pants.
10 being like, no, it's good. Well, it's, you know, it's a bit hamdash, but you know, what can you do? You're only human.
Say it's clever, but I'm in the room.
12 be like, Clara, I have to say Clara, this is rubbish. Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of your moments. Thought they were great. One thing I didn't really touch
Clara
on.
Oswald.
Where is Clara? Yeah, no, completely agree. One thing I didn't really touch on when I was talking about how important he was as a Doctor, I think it's really, 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 I really don't want to understate as well how important it is that this is the first full run series Black Doctor that we've had as well. And I think when he was first cast the role, they were like, how do you describe your Doctor? And he said, as a black man. And I think that that's been something really important in this season, especially like you said in that moment at the end of Dot and Bubble, where he did have to dig deep, and because he's able to bring experiences that other Doctors haven't been able to bring to the role, it brings a freshness and it brings new stories and it brings interesting storylines, and that's been something that I've really loved too.
Hopefully we've talked about the issues with the writing behind Dot and Bubble as well, and you should definitely go back and have a listen to that episode. And I think we've both said as well a number of times that we are excited for a better range of writers, a better diversity of writers behind these stories, and I think that will give him more to work with, well, that feels more sort of true to what he can draw on as well from his own experiences. Sunday? Ruby Sunday? Anyone for a Sunday?
Okay,
Anyone for a Sunday? My God, where do we begin? I mean, for me, straight back to the Hun point, honestly, about Hun culture. Her coming from a soap as well, it just all marries up so nicely. Of course, she's from Corrie.
Oh my God.
And the way her biological mother is the emblematic Hun as well, it's just all coming together.
Literally, my favorite thing to come from this is the montages that people have made where they're like, is it the trickster is this? And they're like, no, it's just a white woman's Instagram. And while they're looking at the montage and unit, I'm like, that's so true.
White woman's Instagram. Yes. Yeah, there's that. Listen, I feel very attached to Ruby. Personally, I hear lots said about the fact that, you know, we haven't had enough time with her, and I'll echo that. I feel quite robbed, I think, of just getting more time to get to know this character for us to really earn the sadness of the goodbye at the series end, even if ultimately they're going to be reunited again at Christmas. It looks very likely they will from the previews we've seen. I think she's such an amazing actress. She does humor very well again. I just love when a companion's funny, and she makes me giggle. And I think the character of Ruby needs to be fleshed out a little more. I think we need time with her. We need to see her pushed to the limits, I think, in a few different situations. I'll go into that a bit more in a sec. Her arc, I think we both agree, is pretty disappointing. We'll talk about that more as well.
Yeah, no, completely. Such a fun character. I love getting to know her. I love getting to know her family more. Russell does families really well, and like I feel like that's something that we might have been missing in Companions of late. Yeah, I really, really enjoy Ruby.
I saw someone say this, and I was like, that feels true for me. So I stole it as an opinion. So far, she feels like Clara when she was with 11, in that she was, quote, perfectly delightful, but in need of more depth. hopefully that comes as Clara, through her time with 12, became a very complex and nuanced character. And I was like, yes. Compare and contrast Clara with 11 and Clara with 12. There was a lot of like growth and change, I think, within that. And I'm like, I can very much see this going the same way. We have really seen, I think, with Ruby, her likable bits, and almost exclusively her likable bits. She doesn't tend to make big mistakes, kind of reacts in a moment and does something silly or something jealous or something angry or something unreasonable or something emotional or something human that the Doctor doesn't understand. She doesn't conflict with the Doctor. She tends to kind of just like go along with the Doctor's plan and just sort of be the Doctor's sidekick, really, which is nice. But she needs to almost, I think, elevate to being something more than just like our way in as the audience, to actually almost like, you know, it's like Rose, series 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Rose was jealous. Rose was horrible to her family time to time, horrible to her boyfriend. She, you know, had unlikable elements that they really lent into. And I think it made Rose feel like a more rounded, human, believable character. And the moment I always come back to as well that I loved with Rose as well, when she wasn't just playing kind of the perfect kind of ready packaged companion, was when she first enters the TARDIS and she just starts crying because it's terrifying, because it's just like, I don't understand, like, how is this big on the inside? And she just sobs, and it's like, he's like, oh, that's all right, culture shock. Yes, Mickey's heads come off, and that's in itself weird enough. But I think the initial moment where the Doctor is saying, like, let me calm you down, culture shock, is the whole, like, what? As in, you're an alien. This is alien. Yeah. What? Yeah. And she panics in that moment. And that's what we maybe... Whereas this season leaps in with, what? Time Lord? Parking that. 1,000 years old? Parking that. And it's like this extreme readiness to believe and go where the plot needs her to go.
This is my thing, I think, with Ruby. And again, like I said, really, really love Millie Gibson. Really, really like how she plays Ruby. But I feel like everything we've had from Ruby so far, certainly post Ruby Road, has been incredibly surface level. I think what we got in the church on Ruby Road was a lot of like teasings and like setting up for a character. Like, you know, she has her friends. And I really love, like, we got to know her friends. We got to know like her people at home. We got to know her mum, we got to know her family. Like, I was like, oh, we're really going to get like a good old RTD1 companion. And I feel like we don't necessarily it didn't like deliver in that way. I had a little note here that just said, I love her, but is she as good as Rose? Is she as good as Martha, Donna, Amy, Clara? I don't know. And I don't even think it's necessarily a point of whether or not she's as good. I think, like you said, it's that we haven't seen anything beyond the surface level. So I'm going to talk a bit later about sort of mirroring of plot arcs from other series, but that's exactly, I completely agree with what you said, where when she got on the TARDIS, she's like, all right, cool, time to park that, put this in, cool, do that, oh, now there are dinosaurs, da-da-da, and she doesn't have a moment, you know, and she's immediately on a spaceship, and she's just kind of like running along for the ride, and the second there's a monster, she's an 18-year-old girl, there is a monster chasing you, and she's like, right, get the thing, come on, monster, let's go, and it feels like we never, ever, ever got a moment to see her breathe and see her react and see her, and that kind of lent into this whole sort of theory frenzy of like, she must be something more, she must be something otherworldly, she must be plant, she must be something, because a human wouldn't react like this. And I feel like,
well, this is the funny thing. Some people were saying like, oh no, don't worry about it, the reason she's so comfortable with all this wild stuff happening, she's not real. And it's like, baby, no. Like, she was real all along. Like, it just wasn't.
But then we still have the clowns like me, where we're like, we're already halfway through the story, so maybe she's not real. But like, yeah.
And then, like, I know, not to just do a direct comparison with, like, you know, the era that we love, but, you know, at the end of the world, Rose Tyler, there's a very quiet moment of reflection when the Doctor has brought her to the year 5 billion to watch the Earth get destroyed. A horrible first date. And he's doing it kind of to show off, and he's doing it to almost kind of try and find something they can relate through. Like, look, my world's gone, and in my insane trauma response, let me take you to watch yours go to, so we can bond over that. And there's kind of like a moment of trying to cool off in a quiet room and just process, I've just met aliens. My mum's dead. Everyone I know is dead, and they're buried, and they're down there right now. What? And don't worry about it. You can call them. That was my mum. That was my mum just now, but she's dead. She died 5 billion years ago. And they're having all this kind of, you know, quiet conversation. And she's like, oh, it's just that Shireen said, don't argue with the designated driver. And You know, and it's almost like then they have a real moment, and there's a learning to trust the Doctor there as well, which I don't think we had in this series, really. It just felt like second episode, it was like, well, it's been 6 months and you're my best friend.
No, that's the thing. I feel like this, I mean, again, we'll get into it, but so to go on to the repeated stories from the series, I feel like it almost a bit felt like Russell Davies is patting himself on the back from the work he'd already done and relying on that too much to do storytelling for us as an audience. And I'll be honest, this is honestly out on the pod, I feel like all the moments that very clearly referenced other series and other moments that he'd written, the phone scene, like the reveal on the gangway of a spaceship looking over the nearby planet, all of these things weren't, in my opinion anyway, done as well as they had been already. And if you're going to do something that so heavily sort of flashes back to something that's previously happened, you have to have a reason for it to be doing that, or you have to do it better. And it just, for me, like you said, it doesn't have the emotional depth moments of me thinking this is a girl, she's the same age that Rose was, but she's, you know, the actress is even younger than Billy was, having all these mad, amazing and crazy things happen to her that are terrifying, and she's with a stranger, she doesn't know who this man is, but like you said, we jump 6 months ahead and suddenly they're best friends, and it's like I don't feel like we've had the time to connect with Ruby that makes that big emotional farewell we get in Empire of Death feel warranted, because I don't see them as best friends. I see them as really good mates who are having a laugh, but I think the important thing for me with a companion is I have to feel the same way about them that the Doctor feels about them. And it's clear that the Doctor has some kind of emotional connection to Ruby that we as the audience don't. And I think that's where it kind of wobbles for me.
73 Yards kind of underlines this because of the ordering in the season is a bit weird. In the second episode, in The Devil's Cord, they've been traveling for 6 months or so, I think, by that point. And then make a point of saying that. And then by episode 4, the Doctor goes missing, but Ruby's reaction to that is not kind of to grieve him or kind of really get stuck on that. Like, he was my best friend. Like, he meant everything to me. He was unlike any other person I've ever met before. And, you know, while her life got stuck on that moment, it didn't seem to get stuck on the Doctor. And it was like, though there was all this mystery, who is the woman? Oh my God, all these terrible things are happening to Ruby. It felt like we didn't feel the Doctor's absence in her life in that moment, which was strange because it felt like at that point in the timeline, they should have felt like more to each other already. And that was kind of at the mid-season point. So that was strange to me, I guess.
Well, she had that line where she was like, oh, I barely knew him. I was like, we are at the midpoint in your season. And this is a big fault with the season, I think, is that we shouldn't have you barely know the Doctor by this point. You should feel confident in being like, oh my God, I've been betrothed to this person who means so much to me. And I feel like they've kind of missed a few tricks there. Like, I do think that 73 Yards was Millie's best performance of the season. I really connected with it. She was 18 years old when they filmed it. It was the first thing she'd filmed for Doctor Who. She'd never done a show on this scale before. But even stuff with, like, she had all this character development and then it all got undone by the end of the episode. And I was hoping for these little teasers that we, you know, the memories are still kind of there. And I guess in the Empire of Death, we maybe got that, but not really, where, you know, the time window thing that she was looking at on the screen was showing her clips in 3 hours and the Doctor would be like, oh, is it showing you that? She's like, well, I don't know. I thought we'd at least maybe get a line in in the Legendary Sunday where she meets Kate and she has a moment like, wait, do we know each other? And
yeah,
like, oh, I don't think so. Yeah. And she's like, oh, no, never mind, sorry. And like, we just didn't get that. And I feel like you said earlier with Ruby, I feel like there's a lot of fan theories in this series. And I think this is true with a lot of things in this series. I think there's been a lot of fan theories like, oh, they did that because of this and they teased that because of this. And then none of it came true. But I almost feel like it would have been better if it had. I'm like, oh, that would have really been a good story, wouldn't it? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come back to talk more about, I guess, that story arc. I will also say this as well, because it's important to say, the performance is absolutely not what I'm criticizing in any way at all. I think Millie Gibson is incredible. I think she's just an outstanding actor. Like you said, it's insane that being so young, she leapt in so confidently into that leading role. 73 Yards, particularly, like leading that whole story on your own and being asked, like, right, first story you are doing as this character. You are brand new to this character, but you are going to play all these emotions. You are going to play your character through the years, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, and then come back again to your younger self. And you're going to go through everything in that time, you know, like loss and joy and And it was just like, wow, like to do that as your first episode filming and deliver it so well, because 73 yards really was, I think, one of the season highlights, is so impressive. So, whatever they do with Ruby in the next series, I hope that it continues to kind of push what Millie Gibson can do.
Completely agree. So one thing I want to talk about for a bit are the monsters and villains of the series, because we have had such an array of monsters and villains. The BBC put out a little graphic of all the different monsters throughout the season, and one thing that really bugs me is they put the slugs as the monsters for Dot and Bubble. And
yes, I'm like, they did.
They're not the villains. They're
the man traps.
The man trap. Oh yeah, they call them man traps. I'd never heard them called that before. I was like, you're kind of missing the point.
No, they weren't called that in the story, I don't think.
Lindy Pepperine, that was it. Lindy Bloody Pepperine. She was the villain of the series. Into Gods and Harbingers and Other Monsters and Aliens. I'm going to kind of like blitz through these because we've given full reviews to all of them. Please just go back and listen to our episode reviews. We get a lot more into deep depth here. Some of my highlights: love the Cholder, thought they were such a fun villain. The Goblins, silly but again fun. I really love the fun that we had here. I do think you can sometimes go a bit the other side with silly. Like for me, in a series that has been so experimental and also had quite a few like plot holes here and there, I felt you kind of have to be a bit wary. So it's a fine line to balance. And for me, the Gods and Harbingers, I'm kind of left with more questions than I sort of started with. Jinx Monsoon, I think for me was the best villain of the series. I think she gave a stellar stand-up performance. Really, really incredible casting. I remember hearing that they cast her, and I was so excited but so curious how she was going to play anything other than Jinx Monsoon, and she truly blew me away. But for me, the gods, and Sutek being like the god of all gods, I think you put it quite well in the episode where it was like, when was this sit down council? When was this decided? Who said that you were? Because I feel like, the toy maker who was there in the 60s might have been like playing around outside the universe before you big space dog. And it just kind of felt like Russell decided one day like, oh, well, I'm going to make this happen. And he did. And you can do that as a showrunner. That's fine. But like, I feel like they're using the terms gods and harbingers a bit loose. Like, with a harbinger, are they a species? Do they possess people? Like, Susan Triad clearly was one, but also wasn't. It was one, the kid was. It was like an oddly specific thing to be focusing on so much, especially when your big bad isn't the harbinger, it's the god.
I think there was some great, memorable villains, given there was only 8 stories. I think goblins, slugs, like fab, distinctive look, that kind of thing. Memorable monsters, villains of the week. I think they're pretty cool. The idea, I think, of leaning into Gods and Harbingers is really cool. It feels like a funny place to start, I guess, for season 1, because the idea of introducing kind of gods and the supernatural and the kind of mythical is kind of like a genre-breaking thing where you're kind of like, ooh, we're taking one little step out of sci-fi and one into fantasy. But I think to do that in the first season, when you're still setting up kind of what are the rules, what does a normal episode of Doctor Who look like, new viewer, it's a funny place to start with them all in there, because it almost defines them as like a permanent feature of the universe, even though they're actually quite a new and experimental thing. So it's an interesting way to go with it. But I think, a good variety as well of villains. Like the Cholder were nice, almost like just an easy villain of the week. They weren't, really a world-ending
That's what you need for
threat.
some of them. You need a little villain of the week.
And we and I quite liked the oh, you think the slugs are the villain, but people are the monsters. I quite like that as well.
Me too.
Goblins, it was such a silly idea that they just about pulled off, I think. That kind of thing. Puppeteered by one of the Teletubbies who played Poe. Brilliant. Excellent. I love that.
I forgot about that.
So it's just, I think the selection of villains, and I said about Maestro as well earlier this season, I said that was real big, extravagant, eccentric, theatrical Disney villain, proper pantomime stuff. But I love that as well. I think it came too early in the season for almost like how big a villain that was, but I really liked it.
I think, to be honest, I would have been happy with a Maestro finale. I think that's where you should have ended. Maestro clearly isn't the god of all gods. They're somewhere on the ladder, but they're powerful enough that you should be scared. And we could have had the cliffhanger of episode 1 be the destroyed London. I think the Devil's Cord could have been the finale to the season, and I probably would have been more satisfied. And then it's like, we're not meant to have found out who the one who waits is yet. That's the series 2 finale. That's where we're going. But Maestro is a big enough film. Like, in retrospect, I actually think that could have been a really stellar finale. And a finale in, like, period, like in 60s.
A period finale is a cool
idea.
I
think that's very cool.
I do think whatever happened, the story order is wrong. I think there's no way the Devil's Cord is placed correctly as episode 2. Like, whether or not that was the original intention, it doesn't feel right. That
scene in Boom where they look up and she's like, "Oh, your first alien sky." Like, that should have been episode 2. It didn't make
sense. What are you talking about? Yeah, Boom probably should have been episode 2. But anyway, the story, I would have put it somewhere in the final third for sure. I think it should have been in the final approach to the big conclusion. The one who waits is almost here. Why that was episode 2, I'm not super sure. You never run away. How do you know that?
Also, she said that in the room, like, when the TARDIS was parked just outside. And she's like, he's almost here. And I'm like, he's outside.
He's actually right there. Are you aware? So, yeah, there's that as well. The lead up to Sutek's reveal as well, like, I mean, if I can throw this in at this point, I just don't feel like any seeds were sown, like, leading up to Sutek. And it's almost like, again, I mean, like I say, I'm biased in that I've just rewatched the 3-part finale of Series 3, with the big reveal being the Master. And there's a great setup to that point because you have the warning from the face of Bo, you are not alone. So we kind of have a hint it's going to be a Time Lord. We then have Professor Yana, acronym, you are not alone. And they type it out in big letters at the end. You are.
It was the wrong anagram.
Wrong anagram. I quite like that. And then there's the drumming in his head. We have the return to the chameleon circuit, which we've already seen, the fob watch, because we saw it.
The Vote Saxon posters.
I think it works so much better. But Sutek was funny because as well, to a 2005 onwards viewer, you know, which is me. I'm sorry. I'm young. I'm sorry.
Well, you're not that young.
I'm not that young. I'm not that familiar with all of the classic villains and monsters. I'm sorry. And here I am doing a Doctor Who podcast, and I don't know them all that well. But classic fans also aren't really getting a character that they already know because he's supposed to have evolved. So his design is different. He's changed form. His powers are new. It's not really the same character. And then to be the big bad at the end of the series as well, he is deployed and vanquished within the hour entirely. So, and there's no real tie really to what's going on in the rest of the series. His ties to the other gods isn't really there. His ties to Ruby's story is very loose.
This brings me on so perfectly into my next little subsection, which is plot threads throughout the season. With Sutek and like the TARDIS growing, I completely agree with you that the seeds were not sown. Sutek for me, and I don't mean to sound like a negative Nancy, but I'm going to say how I feel. Sutek for me did not warrant the big bad reveal that I think they were hoping for. I remember Russell saying, "Oh my God, I want reactions at midnight. I want reaction videos from people watch this." And I think my reaction was just a bit like,
Exact reaction was, "Oh, they are doing Sutek." Followed by, "I'm not that sure who Sutek is. I must get around to finishing the Pyramids of Mars." The Sutek being the final villain, I don't know if that felt like the right culmination of the kind of whole theming of myths and legends and goblins and bogeymen. And then Sutek, I don't think that worked. But, you know, that's me. The other plot thread, of course, was the reveal of Ruby's mum, which I think we both agreed. We talked about this a lot more in Empire of Death in extensive detail, and you'll be bored of hearing about it by now, I'm sure. Except you're still here, so maybe you're not. We both felt that was a bit naughty because they'd given us a lot of setup that, you know, Ruby really wasn't an ordinary person, that she was surrounded by coincidence. She had a hidden song inside her heart, that the memory of her birth was changing, that the goblins focused on, you know, the moment of her birth as a particularly significant and weak point in time, that Snow manifested when she thought about her birth, and that the Doctor said he'd never seen a memory so strong, and that Maestro was like, there's something very wrong with this creature, and then in the end I was like, no, she's normal Ruby, don't worry about it. It's all a coincidence. It's because of the significance we put on that birth that it felt significant. That's it, really. I think a lot of that was set up, designed, it seems, to get us guessing, get us theorizing. in a way that probably was never really going to satisfy anyone. I think that was a bit naughty.
I think for me, yeah, I don't care that she was random. I don't care that it was like a fake out reveal. That's all fine. For me, been a big bugbear of mine throughout the season. A lot of the plot points in this have quite large and valid critiques on the plot holes. And then these plot holes seem to get argued away by either Russell T Davies being on a podcast or a platform or something, or maybe Ben Cook tweeting something on Twitter, or someone saying something on social media being like, oh, but that was because of this. Like, a very, very valid critique. I remember in Doctor Who magazine, Russ was saying, oh my goodness, the finale is amazing. You will be going back to the church and Ruby Road, be going all the way back to the beginning. You'll be looking at everything, rewatching the scenes, watching the backgrounds. You'll be looking at everything to try and work it out. And the whole crux of that reveal was that the mum was pointing at a sign on a lamppost that actually wasn't there. And that, in the back of my mind, is still in Clown Town, where I'm like, surely it's going to get revealed in the next season that, like, the trickster's the big bad, it was all a lie, and he's messing with memories, and da-da-da.
Let me say a couple nice things as well, sorry, because we're all about balance. The production value on this season, as you'd expect, with the big budget, with Bad Wolf, has been absolutely immense. And I've loved that. I've appreciated that. I think it's looked so beautiful every time we get a behind the scenes or an Unleashed. It just gives me another layer to how much work goes into creating every second, every minute of this show. And it's such an impressive thing. Like, I really think just the TV and film industry is so cool. And I love like the work and the creativity that goes into it and all the artistry. And I love as well the behind the scenes, the peek behind the curtain we get, you know, and also the spotlight they've put on some of the more junior talent that have come in as well. People who've like done apprentices, who've had these really interesting career journeys, getting their break in TV, be that as set designers, be that as runners, whatever it is. Just love all of that as well. I think it's so cool. And I love what Doctor Who has done for the TV and film industry in Wales as well. I think it's just so awesome. And I love them shining the light on that. So I think that's just always very cool.
Yeah. I've really loved the fact as well that they put, because I think Unleashed is only in the UK, and they've put the 10-minute behind the scenes videos on YouTube as well for like different footage than Unleashed to ensure that across the world can watch these kind of behind the scene content.
Then of course I've got to say something about the music. I really feel like Murray's been back on his game. Funny enough, I saw a comment the other day, like someone said like, no, actually the music in this series has been very disappointing. We've got nothing new. And I was like, what? Like what? Because
it's okay, they can be wrong.
I've heard lots of new themes and motifs and a very different approach, I think, to what Murray's done in the past with the music. Deep analysis of it, but 15's theme, which is, we discovered, a perfect inversion of 11's theme. If you go on YouTube, you'll hear 11th Doctor's theme inverted, and it is literally dun 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 dun. Yes, it's very cool how they did that, and they hid kind of a bit of 11's theme in there. That's why I think it works so well. There's a bit of familiarity to it. 11's theme is one of the best themes of all time. Mm-hmm. The version we get in Dot and Bubble at the very end really slaps as well. I really hope we get a release of this soundtrack, because I've been listening to the unreleased versions on YouTube forever, and they are crunchy because you always get sound effects mixed in and the volumes go all over the place. There are some great versions out there, but I'm ready for the officials. Versions as well of some of the classic motifs we had, not classic, but as in like in RTD1, and even all the way through like Moffat's era and so on. There's some great themes that have come back now through Murray Gold, which I love, and I think there's no reason not to use them again. You know, we've had This Is Gallifrey come back, version of Never Tell Me the Rules from Matt Smith's Regeneration when they're defeating Sutek, and some great new tracks. There's this beautiful track when the Doctor's telling Rogue that he's the Lord of Time. That was one that I said I loved. I think it's beautiful. There are loads of brand new pieces that are really gorgeous, and I hope we get this series release.
I also love how they take the themes of both the Doctor and Ruby and kind of like adjust them, like you said, at the end of Dot and Bubble. But also for me, the piece of music that really just sort of was like etched into my mind is when the TARDIS is flying out of the vortex and towards the space station, Space Baby, which that's got real like dun 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 dun, dun like it's so
got that lovely like
good
brass band feel. It's good, isn't it? Yeah,
it's really really good.
Here's my broader thought. Here's my hottest take. Mm-hmm. On the series, and like for me, did the series work, inverted commas? I guess what were the aims of season 1? I suppose on one level it was to secure a future for the show with Doctor Who and just make sure that it was kind of in good hands, in good ownership, that it continued to be relevant. To bring in a new audience was really key as well and give them a bit of a jumping on point. And I think as well, try and bring Doctor Who a little bit back into the kind of the cultural mainstream. Maybe mainstream isn't the right word. People have made the argument that in TV, nothing is really mainstream anymore. Everything's kind of hyper specific to everyone's interest now because you've just got so many different draws on your attention. You turn on the TV now and it's like iPlayer, Disney, YouTube, and everything's trying to pull you in different directions. So you kind of just end up with an audience who really love that thing that maybe the mainstream doesn't really exist anymore like it used to on television. Anyway, did it achieve those things? Well, I took a look. I shared this with you earlier, Sam.
You love your stats. You love
my
your statistics.
Stats, my ramblings. And I was like, well, we've had the viewing figures, and we know that the viewing figures are kind of difficult to analyze because TV habits have changed so much over time. So I was like, let me go into the Google search trends over time. And what you can do with that is you can put in any search term and you can see how that's like changed in relative terms over time. So at the top, you've got 100 for most interest, and at the bottom, you've got 0 for least interest. And over time, it puts all those searches on like a relative scale. So I was thinking like, when in the last 3 years has Doctor Who been peaking in interest, and like, you know, how's that looked? So when series 13 was on, Flux and Eve of the Daleks, it was pretty low. It was pretty like, you know, consistently low for a period.
Yeah.
It sort of peaked at like 28 out of 100 around series 13, 22 for Eve of the Daleks. And when Legend of the Sea Devils was on, it peaked a little bit higher at like 30. So it was kind of always like trundling in relative terms.
Yeah.
Shooting Gatwa gets announced, spikes right up to 51, goes back down again. We get to November, we get to Power of the Doctor, and it shoots up because we had Power of the Doctor on TV, we had all those classic Doctors return and some classic companions, and we had the regeneration into David Tennant. And there was a lot of online conversation at that point about, well, oh my God, David Tennant's back, I might watch this again. A few months later, we have another peak around Christmas time. We got that 60th anniversary trailer back down around 28. And then it stays quiet in 2023. It was quiet because we were off air for so long. But of course, Wholala was still on and maintaining excitement all the way through the year.
We really were putting in the miles.
Then we get to the 60th specials and we get a new peak really high at like 74. So engagement very high, interest very high in Doctor Who. And that stays high until the Christmas specials, peaking again even higher at 80. So lower in terms of search interest, Doctor Who, around the time of the 60th anniversary specials and the Christmas special, relative to the Power of the Doctor and David Tennant's return. Less searches, less interest, relative. And then now, when season 1 came back on, that peak was much lower. So down from 80 with the Christmas special airing to 40, that was the highest it got for season 1. So in relative terms, purely in terms of searches for Doctor Who, who's Googling Doctor Who, it had about half as much interest during season 1 as it did during the Christmas special. And the Christmas special, again, had less than during the Power of the Doctor. So, I mean, does that tell us about the relevancy of Doctor Who? I mean, in some terms, yes, and sometimes no, because it reflects all the other ways that people are engaging with Doctor Who and not just literally Googling Doctor Who as a search term. But we do know as well that like the viewers for the series from the consolidated figures we've got seem to be lower through season 1 than they were for the actual specials and for the Church from Ruby Road. So, you know, has Doctor Who got more interest than it did have in series 11, 12, 13? I think it does. I think it's fair to say that if you look at kind of where interest was for Legend of the Sea Devils, this has been a far more popular series than those specials were. And that's not to like point fingers at that being any individual's fault for that. I just think that's just where we are now, and you'd hope so because they put so much cash and Disney marketing money into it that you kind of hope so. So in terms of, I think, generating some more relevance for Doctor Who, yes, they have achieved that. Have they provided a fresh jumping on point, Sam, for new viewers? What do you think?
Well, thank you so much. I'll take the mic off again. I think that first of all, I think that was some really, really amazing research that you did. And
Thank you.
You gave me a heads up that you were saying that. And I think that was a really, really insightful way. Of course, like you said, it's not an exclusive list of like, this is how relevant Doctor Who is because people Google Doctor Who. But I think that is a really, really interesting factual insight into at least one element of measuring the cultural relevancy of Doctor Who right now. Do I think it's a good jumping on point? No, I don't. I think that there were two things that they set out to do with this season. I think they set out to make something new and fresh and exciting, and I think they wanted to make a soft reboot of the show to be a jumping on point for new fans. Do I think they were successful in creating something new, fresh and exciting? Yes, I do. I think that I have connected with Doctor Who in a way that I have not connected with it since I was a child. I know that so many other people who kind of fell off Doctor Who a little bit have come back on in a hard way. Because of this new direction of the show, and I feel very confident in saying this, I have gone from a passive viewer of the show who used to love it when they were younger to someone who runs a Doctor Who podcast with them. So I do believe that they have successfully created something new and fresh, exciting, and something that people are talking about. Do I think they have created an easy jumping on point for the show? No. And if I'm honest, I think that is the biggest blunder that they have done. I think they had the opportunity to say, look, we're going to grab you back with the 60th specials. Everyone who used to, love the early Russell Davies stuff, come back. We've got these. This is very safe viewing for you. And then we will hold your hand into this new era with this new fantastic Doctor, and you'll love it. And I think that that's what we all thought we were getting. And what we got was a series that was more experimental than ever, had more plot holes than ever, and also didn't feature its Doctor in... I worked out it was over 20% of the series was missing the Doctor, as in he didn't feature as a key character in those episodes. All those things together, along with relying on a character from Classic Who that isn't how he was in Classic Who as the finale, which is a god that destroys the universe up in an hour. When you're doing a series that is only 8 episodes long on a Christmas special, I think they tried to do too much with the time they had and didn't successfully bring people in as a clean jumping on point. I don't feel like I could say to someone, oh, I really like Doctor Who, I'm not really sure where to jump in. I don't think I could confidently say to them, start with a church on Ruby Road, because that leads so much on from the giggle. And the fact that episode 1 in this series, Space Babies episode 1, is really episode 2, so they can't even go on Disney Plus if they're abroad and go on episode 1, because episode 1 is episode 2 to episode 1, but episode 1 is special 4 of the 3 specials before that, and the 3 specials before that relies on series 4 of Doctor Who. No, I don't think it is a clean jump.
That is the difficulty. No, I so much. I think filming schedules led them to a situation where they needed to fill a gap for the 60th anniversary, which I think was a silly position for them to end up in, really, but it's where they were. I think for me, as an existing fan, the 60th anniversary specials was so much fun. I loved seeing David Tennant and Catherine Tate back. I don't know how many casual viewers remember what the storyline was from that time. But oh yeah, the meta crisis. Do they remember that? I'm not sure. But I do feel like it was a funny choice for them to have David Tennant pass the baton to shoot to Get What instead of Jodie Whittaker. Was a complicated thing to add in. It was a shame that almost the first female Doctor didn't get to hand it over to the queer Doctor. And anyway, there we are. That was a choice they made. Yes, I think in terms of those specials which rely on 2008, and then the Church Ruby Road kind of relies on the giggle, and then the giggle follows through into the new series. It doesn't offer a clear starting point. I think that doesn't require you to go back a little bit further for a little bit more context, which is tricky as well. And in terms of for a casual fan, would I recommend someone at work? I'm just oh yeah, you should hop on the new Doctor Who. I don't know, because I think if it's the kind of thing you like, sure. But Space Babies and the Church on Ruby Road as the opening stories are so Marmite and are so unusual compared to what we've had before in terms of musical numbers and talking babies and all those elements of it,
fantasy and not sci-fi, I guess.
Yeah, it's if it's for you, it's for you, but if it's not, it's really not. And I think a general audience, maybe it's not for them. I don't know.
I don't know if this series will win over people that aren't sure they like Doctor Who. I think this series is loved by people who love Doctor Who.
Yeah, which maybe isn't a bad thing, but I wonder how well that works in terms of capturing a new audience.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I'll tell you what doesn't capture a new audience. Putting the episodes on Let me tell you that. Miserable.
Midnight, utterly miserable. I speak to you directly now, BBC. Please turn that around, because at that time of night, it's just not. I mean, I'm sat down. I mean, every time it got to about 10:20, and I'd be like, oh my God, it's an hour and a half to go. And I am getting tired now. And that says something. I mean, no, I'm not young, am I? But I mean, just I was like, oh God. And every time the episode finished, I was so cranky and so like, because I think 7 p.m. Saturday night viewing, it allowed us to have these little viewing parties. It meant we could watch it with our friends.
I loved it. I missed it.
We could watch it with our families, and it just removed. It just meant if I was ever back staying with my family, it just meant that we had to put it on a bit, but very quiet on the TV. You know, we just had to, and they go straight to bed when it's done, and that just killed the family viewing experience for me, because unless you were willing to see the whole thing spoiled, you know, the next day, you couldn't really wait until the communal viewing time. I think the majority of people, I think, still did watch it at that time, but I think for a hardcore Who fan, that wasn't really an option. So anyway, I didn't love that. No. And then, yes, I think you know, at this point, it's been said by so many people, eight episodes was just too short. It just doesn't feel right for Doctor Who. It felt so rushed. And I think when we got to the end of the season, we were like, okay, and it's done. I think awesome that they're pushing the boundaries. Great they're doing the experimental stories. When it's all experimental stories in a short 8-episode run that we kind of waited like 2 years for, from Power of the Doctor to get to, or maybe not 2 years, year and a half, it felt like, okay, this wasn't quite enough. I don't know how long it was from the point that we had RTD announced, but it felt like, you know, it took them a long time to get up and running. Hopefully now they're in their flow, it'll feel a bit more consistent.
I hope so. Well, look, one thought that I want to leave this on, because I know that I've had, you know, I have lots of love about the season. I've had some things I've not loved so much. Something that I kind of want to end this on, I touched on it a moment ago, is that not only have I felt more connected with the show than I have in years because of this new direction it's going in. And girl, we've been in the trenches. We've had our wilderness years. We've had our periods of not being on. One thing that I'm so grateful for it is that I feel like it has really opened the floor for fans to say, we are going to come together, be that on Twitter, be that for viewing parties, like you said, be that for galley cabs, be it for BBC run events, be it for the proms, or be it for, you know, the midnight screening at the IMAX. I feel like I have made, not to get personal, but I have made so many friends in the last couple of years because of Doctor and because of its new relevancy and because of all of us who were like, oh yeah, I loved it as a kid and I've really enjoyed it all the time, but now it's back and we can talk about it and we can do all this stuff. I think it's really created a platform for people who might have felt like me when they were at school, like the weird Doctor Who kid. You were the one Doctor Who kid. You're the one that people knew that was what you knew for, and other people watched it and whatever, but you were the weird Doctor Who kid. And I feel like now all of us weird Doctor Who kids have come together and had a chance to sort of unite in a way over this show, and especially even like doing this podcast, not to get sentimental because it's the end of series 4 of Wholala, but it's just really made a space and allowed for people to communally get together in a way that I personally haven't experienced before in like a fandom. And I'm sure that other people have, even with Doctor Who, and I just haven't been a part of that. But for me, this feels like it's created a very special and open space. So I'm very, very grateful for this series for that. And I'm so excited to see where they go with it. Hopefully they clear up some of the plot holes. Hopefully they tie up some of the loose ends. But I'm just excited to get more, because if the last year has been anything to go by, I'm just very excited to see what we get coming up.
It has been a lot of fun. The Doctor Who fan base, I do feel, are quite good eggs. I think we have a lot of laughs. We have a lot of laughs. And I think the post episode memes, screen grabs, jokes, dissections have been so much fun. I've had such a great time as well. I so agree. I love hearing people's Doctor Who takes. I love hearing people say how much an episode meant to them. I love when people tear it apart. I think it's all great. It's all fine. It's all lovely.
Yeah, I really, really love it. And you know what else I love? You, dear listener. I love you for listening to the other episode of Wholala.
Oh, yeah, thanks, listener.
So much for sticking with us on another season of Wholala. We are at the end of season 4 of Wholala. Can you believe it?
Our season numbering is extremely loose, but we have agreed this is the end of season 4 and the beginning of season 5 while the show is off.
See, you say this. I've got my little trackers. I've got my logs. We try and do a 20-episode season, but this has been bumper.
It's our longest ever season. You didn't realise you were listening to season 4, but trust you were.
And I want to thank you so much for sticking with us while we watched the entirety of season 1. It's been so fun having Doctor Who to watch every single week and talk about. But let me tell you this. The fun on Wholala does not stop. No. We have already got plans underway for making season 5 of Wholala the best season yet. We are going to take next week, a well-deserved break, I think, to catch our breath, collate our thoughts. But I can give you a little tease for what you're going to be getting next season of Wholala. Let me tell you this. It's about another doctor. A doctor in training. Might touch on her a little bit in the season.
Oh, I think I'm going to love it because I've gone back to this episode recently and I was like, banger. And I'm so excited to get my teeth into it.
Me
or
too.
Indeed, my little straw.
My little straw. Ooh, honey. Well, thank you so much for listening to this entire season of Wholala, as well as this episode with our thoughts on season 1. If you want to reach out to us, you can on all of our social media platforms. We're at HulalaPod everywhere. That is X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all of which are at HulalaPod. We love to hear your thoughts. And please send us emails. We were talking before about some changes we want to make to Wholala to make the season more connected to you. And I think one of those ideas is going to be asking you to send us your funny Doctor Who stories, or just stories in general, be that hot takes or funny stories when you met somebody who worked on the show or a connection to the show. So please, if you have a story that connects you to Doctor Who, email us at hulalapod@gmail.com and we want to hear it, and you might well feature on season 5 of Wholala.
Also, we're going to say, if you'd like to start sending us anonymous stories, we're very happy to respect your anonymity. We were like,
oh, please.
Not trying to get dirt on the show. We'd like to know, what is the most cringe encounter you've ever had with a Doctor Who star, for example, and we can respect your anonymity. Send us something you think will make us giggle. I'd love to hear that.
Exactly. We do. We don't want to out anyone's identity on the pod, but we would love to hear your juicy goss. So please let us know, dear listeners.
Yes. Yeah, so if you enjoyed the show, please do rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening. You can also follow the pod, get notified when new episodes arrive. You can find us on Coffee, KO-FI, or indeed just go back and listen to those ads again and again. No, don't do that. That's probably against the terms. And you can also share this pod with someone who you think will enjoy it, or just an episode that you thought was really good, like this one, and put it in a story. And that helps us find new people who might also enjoy being friends of the pod.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the season. Very soon when we visit a certain hospital to see a certain Smith and a certain Jones.
Maybe they can sort out my cold.
Oh, goodness. Well, until then, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you soon.
Bye-bye. Have a great week.
Bye.